Hello and welcome back to the building of Tony Ray's Tiger Moth. In the last session, I spent some time looking at the cockpit, and as you can see, I've got it painted inside. I've added some of the tubular steel structure that you would find in it, a simulation of it. In this case, it's simply some bamboo skewers. I've made up the little mini kit, and the parts to the mini kit, installed some of the levers and mechanisms, which it's hard to see this for the shadows, which were used as a trim lever, and another one, I think the top left smaller one, was used to stop the engine from overcooling. So I've added some detail, and I hadn't intended on doing this next, but what I'm going to do is do one of the dashboards and apply the leather, simulated leather, to the headrest and to the chin guard, stop you smashing your face into the cockpit dashboard if you go too far forward. So I'm going to do that just to see what it looks like. Before I do so, you can see here, somebody made a comment, I hope you're going to give them something to sit on. And I've simulated a cushion that I've seen in a number of photographs. There's a need for a seatbelt to be added on, which I'll do as well. But I'm going to show you how I made the cushioning first of all. So strap in, get your favourite tipple in your hand, and we'll do a little video on adding a bit more detail to this kit. I'll show you how I've produced this seating. I'm using this material, which is a high density foam. It's used in insulation work, particularly under floorboards, when bathrooms are being done, or under floor heating. And what I do is simply cut out the shape. I've sliced this to a little thinner sheet. Comes in big 8x4 sheets like this. It's got a multitude of applications. I used it extensively when I was modelling model railways to simulate brickwork. I mean, I'm just doing this so quickly, they're not even straight. So you mark on the lines that you want to produce, the ridges of the seating, and then I use a dental probe like this and simply score it. And it'll take an indent like that. You get the general idea. And then it'll sand as well. So I take a file, take the corners off, and repeat that all the way across. And then that's just an application of some acrylic paints to simulate the leather. And that's how I've produced the cushion for the passenger and for the pilot. And it's going to have somebody sitting on it anyway, so you're going to see very little of it, but I just thought I'd show how you do that if anybody else is thinking. This stuff's great. If you can find any builders or somebody who's just done some insulation, they're almost always going to have some spare sheeting. In fact, I got the sheets of this stuff from a chap who saw me asking about it, and he just sent it up free of charge. People just want to get rid of it. It's either given to somebody or going to the tipping normally. So that's that. The next stage is going to be to actually get out the dashboard, and we'll have a look at that. It's basically a kit in its own right. So let's have a look. So here are the bits, and as I think I said there, it's basically a kit in its own right. Glazing for the instruments, the overlay for the panel. Now I've had a look, and many of these are black, but that seems such a shame. I have actually seen a few Tiger Moths with a natural wood finish, and that's what I'm going to go for here. Cliff Harvey did the same, I think for the same reason. It makes it stand out so much more. The back plate for the actual instrument panel to go on, I'll take those out and check them against the fuselage in a moment. and then there are a series of fine overlays for the bezels, I think that's the name for them, that surround the instruments, and I'll be painting these black because I think that'll stand out nicely against the wood. And of course the instruments themselves, there are two obviously for the front and rear, including the stuff for the compass and writing to go around the panel. It looks really neat. So first things first, I'll cut out the back plate and make sure that they're a decent fit. The front one for here, I'm going to make that removable. I'm going to do it with magnets, and the reason for that is, as this is going to be a nitro model, I need to be able to get the tank in, and the tank goes through there, and I don't think it'll be possible to get the tank in easily if that panel's on. So I'm going to make this magnetic so that it can come out along with the seat at the front, so I've got access to get a tank in there. You have to think ahead sometimes. If you don't, you can end up in a whole world of pain. So the first thing I'm going to do, keep these neatly to one side. I'm going to cut these out and make sure that they fit nicely in the fuselage. Okay, let's get this varnished up. I want to preserve the wood effect. I just double checked Cliff Harvey's video, and he also points out that virtually all of them are painted black. However, I have found a restored Tiger Moth that I was watching, with an excellent sort of walk round of the Tiger Moth itself, showing the pre-flight procedures. Chap in Australia, I think, videoed it, although the pilot was South African, I believe, and it had a wooden varnish background. I'm going to use, I'm going to varnish it with some non-shrinking dope, simply because it almost dries instantly, and you get a high gloss finish, which is what I'm looking for. So I'll do that now. Although I'm only going to do one dashboard at the moment, I'm just keen to see what it looks like. I will varnish the other one at the same time. Makes sense to do so. And being dope, this stuff goes off almost instantly, which is what I'm looking for. I don't really think it'll need more than one coat, to be quite honest with you. It very slightly darkens the shade of the wood. Goodness me, the fumes with this stuff. You know, I know now why people don't like using it, but strangely enough, the wife doesn't mind it. I think she's probably had a secret past she needs to tell me about, but it's not very pleasant stuff. You should really have the windows wide open, or preferably do this sort of thing outdoors. As I say, it's pretty toxic stuff. I'm not sure if the non-shrinking is quite as bad as the shrinking dope, but both have a downside to them, and that's the smell. But I have a few tins of the stuff that were given to me, so I need to use it really. So there you go, let that dry, and in the intervening time I'm going to paint the bezels. I think I'll actually leave them, no, I'll have to take them out, because if I leave them in the actual wood, it won't get the edges done. So I need to get those popped out and painted up. It's pretty straightforward which ones are which, I believe. Goodness me, the fumes. Some of them are for the compass, which is a different colour. I think it's a sort of dark grey colour from the photos I've seen. So I'll get those painted up, popped out and painted up, and then we'll start building up the layers to produce the desired effect. Let's get cracking, folks. I was going to apply paint to these, but I think I will use this permanent marker. We'll see how it turns out. Put it on a piece of scrap. Yeah, it's a lot easier with a Sharpie. Get a much more controlled finish. Yeah, so I'll do that with all of these. There are 5 bezels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 instruments. One of the instruments is clearly not going to have a bezel. Don't know if that was the case, but I don't think it'll look out of place. The thing about the Sharpies is that the colour tends to bleed a little, which is ideal for going around the edge. I think the black against the wood finish is going to look really cool, and that's part of the reason why I've chosen a wood surround. This is the larger one. Now the compass itself is a little kit in its own right, and I noticed on Jeff's video he showed the finished item but didn't show the stages, so just in terms of supporting people to build this kit themselves, I think I'll show that in a little bit more detail, because I really do recommend you look at Cliff's journey. He's a little bit further ahead than me, and also he tackles things slightly differently, which is useful for anybody who's attempting to model themselves, to pick the brains of others. A saying that I picked up once, I heard once, I thought was really cool was, copying somebody slavishly is plagiarism, copying lots of different people is research. And I think that's the way I use the internet, to find out how other people have done things, and then I make the choice on what I think will work best for me. And sometimes, very occasionally, I'll come up with my own ideas, but I don't claim to be an expert on anything. I'm a bit of a magpie in collecting ideas on how to do things. So there we go. They are all done and ready. This may need to be touched on the inside. I'll just carefully see here. So I'm just running the... Didn't want to do that at all. Fortunately, because it's been varnished, that's not going to show up. Just want to go around the bottom. There you go. That's ready. And we'll start building up the layers. Let's crack on. Okay then, before we start building up this dashboard, let's put together the compass. Now the most difficult... Okay, before we start building up the instrument panels and board, let's put together the compass. Now the most difficult part of this, I think, is going to be, and has been, finding all the bits. And for that you really do need to make use of your parts list and find out which sheets they're on. But I think I've got everything I need now. Obviously I'm only going to make one of them up. So let's work our way up, and the computer photograph says it all. So the first thing to do is to make the base on which the compass is mounted, and that is this little piece of ply here. So we'll put a little bit of glue on. And we'll mount the first part, making an effort to keep it at right angles. There's the first bit, and then I've never dry fitted that, which I should have done. Yeah, that fits. So I'll just zap the glue in. Just let the glue wick into the joint. There you go. So let's build up this little sandwich layer. So the first one to go in is compass part. I'm assuming the CK is that for compass part 12, and that's followed by a layer of 2 plywood parts, which are C11. Now obviously you want to get them central, otherwise it's going to not work. And for this, picking up the plywood parts, I like to use the tip of the knife. There you go. And then this whole thing mounts on top of the next piece. Hello Sooty, you come to join in? And I think feels your friend here. If it feels square, it is square. That's the next layer. And then we have this piece, which is the 1mm ply with the circular pattern marked on it. Once again, it's probably best to do this in reverse order. Drop of glue in the center, and then eye it up. Excuse the baldy head, folks. Okay, now the next part that needs to go on there, I need to cut out the compass itself. This is a new blade. So I'll put a little drop of, actually, for this, I'm just going to use a little bit of white glue. And we'll put this on. Now it's not shown, but I think it needs a piece of the acetate here, so there's plenty of scrap on the sheet. So I'm going to cut a little piece out, and that's going to go on next. It's probably oversized this. This may not work, but we'll see. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, as they say. Pulling the backing off. That will go on like that. Now what I'm going to do is glue the cover on, glue the cover pieces together, these two pieces, and before I put them on I'm going to paint the whole thing, sand it and paint it, because it'll be very difficult to get the paint inside there without marking this. So I'm going to put a drop of CA on here. Just on one side. Line it up. I'm not happy with that, so because I've only put one drop on, I can take it off quite easily. Try again. That's better. Let's put a little drop on. There we go. Right, I'll sand this up and give it a layer of paint. And then we can put the whole thing together, and that's ready to be mounted on the dash when it's completed. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry on the compass, I can apply some thin down white glue to the back of the plate, and we can get the instrument panel glued on. That's all it needs. Thin down's best, I think, because it gives you a little bit of working manoeuvrability. You obviously don't want it too wet so it soaks through the paper. There we go. Because it's slightly wet, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Yeah, happy with that. Leave that to dry, and then we'll start building up the layers. Now, when you pull this acetate sheet off the clear covering, you need to make sure it's orientated the right way around, because the holes match the instruments on the panel. So I've made sure that that's the case. Taking the protective film off, and I'm going to just mark this in place, or put this in place with a little dab of wood glue. You don't really need it because the screws are going to hold things in place, and the clear acetate has the holes for the screws to go through, but I'm just going to put a little dab on just to help. It's pretty limited how much this actually holds, but it's enough to hold things in place. That's all I want at this stage. Just making sure there's no layer on the other side. And there is. So make sure you take off both layers. There you go. Put that there. And as I say, this won't particularly stick well. However, it will just hold it enough, I hope, to keep everything in place. If it doesn't, I'm actually sorely tempted to do that with CA, because if it's far enough apart, in fact I think I will, if it's far enough apart it won't cause a bloom on the instrument panel itself. No, leave it, Mark. Overthinking it. Okay, let's leave that for a little bit. Time for breakfast for me now. Then I'll come back and we'll start building up the layers. Right, when it comes to actually screwing this thing on, I don't even know if we've got the screws in the kit. The perhaps are, but I've got some really small Phillips self-tappers, and I think I'm going to use them. Well, I am going to use them, but I'm conscious that if I put these through the covers, the bezels, the holes are a little bit small, so I'm using a jeweler's brooch here. I've had these absolutely years. They're not cheap, but when you need them, they're the tool for the job. And it's money well spent if you're buying tools, in my opinion. So this is cutting out a larger hole so that the screws will go through easily. I'm going to do that in all 4 corners before I put it on. I'm supporting the bezel because it is only 1mm thick ply after all. And I've got a rough idea of where this brooch needs to go through. They're tapered, so I'm increasing the cut as I'm forcing it through. Because you don't really want it to be cutting into this at all. You want the screw to pass through cleanly and to screw into the layers below. The acetate itself will actually help because there's only a small hole for them. They're made in them. Made in it. Let's get it right, Mark. Okay, that's it opened out. I'm just going to actually attach one corner at a time. One screw rather than trying to put them all in. That'll give me a little bit of leeway. So if I put this on, line it up. Seems to be lining up okay. Now this is really a case of tweezers. Let's put this on. See if I can line it up. If at first you don't succeed, give up, Mark. No, let's try again. I might have to start this screw in the hole first. Oh no, there we go. Now, I did have, yes, I've got a really small screwdriver set. It's lifted. Yeah, it is fiddly. There you go. Doesn't that look the business? So I've just got to repeat for all of the bezels, which I will do, of course. And that's holding everything in place. I'll put what this one hasn't got a bezel for it. So in this case, I'm just going to screw this straight through. There's bezels for all the others, and this I've marked off 2 holes and I've drilled them through because they weren't marked on for the, I think it's for level flight. It indicates the level flight. So I'll screw this bottom corner and that'll sort of tie everything up, I think. See if it'll. Trying to be too clever there. These black screws I think look really cool rather than silver or polished metal. So that's that one holding that in place, and that's now I can feel a bit more confident in working around and adding the other bezels. So I'll show you what it looks like when they've all been added. Well, there we have it, all screwed on and fixed on. I haven't put the labels on yet. I'll do that in a moment. Now that the instrument panel has been done, barring a few labels, I'm going to tackle putting the simulated leather covering onto these headrests. And what it suggests you do is you treat it like an iron-on covering. Very similar technique to what I do with the dress lining. So you apply a PVA glue. I'm using Mod Podge simply because I've got it. PVA will do the job. Apply the glue, let it dry. So I'm doing that. I'll do it with the headrest. Nice generous layer. Leave it let it dry, and then that will be reactivated with the heat of the iron when you put it on. Now, I haven't got a fancy iron with a temperature sensor on it, so I'll have to experiment a little bit. It says 125 degrees is what works with this simulated leather. So I'll clear the decks, get rid of some of this junk, and we'll have a go at applying the covering. Scissors, easier. That's a relatively new blade as well, so obviously it needs a sharper blade. It's had time to go off. I've got this set on a medium setting, so that feels like it's sticking a bit. I'm going to drop it down and then come back to it, so I'll just pause it there. Okay, I've taken the temperature down a little. Still feels like it's sticking. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put some tissue and see if it works this way. The stickiness is on the iron itself. I need to give that a clean. Let's see if it's working. Yeah, it's starting to stick. Right, I'm going to clean this up and we'll start again. Third time lucky. Not sure there's enough heat there, so I'll put it up a little, but I'm going to take a cautious approach with a cloth, I think. I've got one now. It's an old pillar case, will do the job. Actually, I'll cut myself a piece. There you go, just a piece of rag. I don't normally work with a sock on the iron. I don't find it helpful at all, to be honest with you, but this is doing the job, I hope. Yeah, that's sticking. Probably go a little bit higher the temperature because I'm going through an extra layer of cloth. Once that's on, I'll apply another layer of glue around the edge here so that there's something for the fake leather to pull around. Okay, crack on with that. Bring you in here to show you what I'm doing. I'm slowly working it. I found I think the temperature range, and I've found the limits of what this can handle in terms of being stretched. If you pull it too far, you will rip it apart. But it just needs a little bit of coaxing. And it goes round, which is what we're after. You know, I'm happy with that. That's the backrest done. I won't actually glue it in place. I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. And I'm working on this one. Needs a little bit longer to go. You can see a very slight tear there where I pushed it too far. But that'll actually go under the lip of the... it'll go under the lip, so I'm not worried about that. but at least I've found the limits. If you pull it too far, you will rip it. So try and avoid that is what I'm trying to say. Right, let's get some of this round. I may cut some of the surplus off, because we don't need it. Yeah, I've got too much material here. Careful with that. Yeah, I'm going to have to persuade this a little bit more. And then we'll see what this looks like once it's in position. Okay. Well, there we have it. Everything's in place, although not glued in yet, because I think it'll be better to cover before it's glued. You can see the leather has been added. The head bumper, as I say, not glued in. I had to trim this away a little to make it fit. I think the instrument panel looks really stunning. Very pleased with it. Joysticks needed to be shortened to allow for access for the servos underneath, and the tubular work made with the barbecue skewers I think is very effective. So there you go. That's how I have to do it. I obviously have to repeat here, and you can see the foam seat inlay sort of finishes things off. I'll add straps, safety straps, once the pilots are procured or made for the model. But there you go. Definitely sets this off. Hope you've enjoyed that little journey. It's the most detail I've ever put into a working model aircraft. Definitely worth the effort, I think. I'm going to do the panels next, I think, although I did say I would leave it. I'm going to do them next, just out of devilment, because I'm still waiting for the engine mount to arrive and I can't do a great deal more at the moment. If you've enjoyed the journey so far, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, why not join the fun and become a subscriber to the channel? Bye, folks.